Hey guys, Zomfox here, and today we are going to be tackling what is the most known team the USFL ever had, the New Jersey Generals. New Jersey Generals are easily the most recognizable team from their owner at the end to some of the players they got and where they played. So let's get started. In the beginning, the founder of the USFL, David Dixon, placed a premium on getting a team in New York. Originally, Donald Trump was supposed to own the team, but he ended up backing out after paying the initial installment fee of the franchise, as he was hoping to be able to buy the Baltimore Colts of the NFL. And so, needing a credible owner, the team decided to get J. Walter Duncan to step in and buy the team. He had originally was supposed to own the Chicago franchise, but he decided to agree to New York because, hey, it's New York. Duncan took on former NFL New England Patriots coach Chuck Fairbanks as a minority owner and also as the team's head coach. Fairbanks also served as the GM as well. And they were trying to get a lease at Giants Stadium, but were able to obtain one on the condition that rather than being called New York, they were called New Jersey. Hence why they are the New Jersey team. And they were the Generals because of the large number of generals based in New Jersey during the Revolutionary War. So yeah, pretty cool. The team made a huge splash and became instantly known when they signed Heisman Trophy winning running back Herschel Walker from the University of Georgia. While the USFL had followed the NFL's lead in banning underclassmen from playing, league officials were certain that this rule would never withstand a court challenge. In an even more ominous development, Walker did not sign a player contract. He signed instead a 3-year personal services contract with Duncan, which the contract is valued at $4.2 million, which is over double the USFL salary cap. But even then, the owners knew that having this guy in the league would give it instant credibility, which, hey, we all know about it. And just how good did he do? Well, he ended up going for 1,800 yards. That's pretty decent. But the team went 6-12 because their defense was piss poor. They allowed the third most points in the entire league. And so finishing 6-12 is pretty bad. In terms of how the team did, the only player that made the all-league team or Sporting News all-star team was Herschel Walker, no surprise. And he did end up winning the USFL Outstanding Running Back of the Year award, so at least there's that. In 1984, Duncan was tired of flying 1,500 miles from his home in OKC to go watch the team play. And knowing that the team was too important for the USFL to have an absentee owner, he decided to sell the team. Who did he sell it to? Donald Trump. Of course. He was originally supposed to buy the team, didn't, but now he got it anyway. He immediately fired Fairbanks and then tried to get high-profile coaches. He tried to get Joe Gibbs, didn't work. Tried to get Don Shula, didn't let him stay at his Trump Tower for free, so he left. And then he decided to get Walt Michaels because Joe Paterno of Penn State turned him down. So yeah, he got former Jets head coach Walt Michaels. The Generals responded from 1983 by adding even more NFL talent. They added wide receiver Tom McConkey, quarterback Brian Sipe, which is the big name they got, as he is a former MVP winner, believe it or not, which, yeah, I know, that's pretty insane, but yeah. Defensive back Gary Barbaro, linebackers Jim LeClaire and Bobby Leopold, and that year, both Herschel Walker and fullback Maurice Carthen had over 1,000 yards, and they eventually went 14-4. And they beat the Philadelphia Stars twice for that franchise's only 2 losses in the season. But the Stars did end up beating the Generals in the playoffs, overall going 14-4 is pretty good, but then losing to the Stars 28-7 after you had just, been the team that was supposedly better than them the whole year, it kind of hurts, but it's one of those things where you just look at it and you're like, dang, especially considering the last week of the season, the Stars actually lost to them 16-10, so it really is kind of wild that happened like that. But hey, the 84 team had a whopping 2 players that were on an all-star, all-league team. Jim LeClaire ended up being on both the all-league and all-star team, and Gary Barbaro of the safety position ended up going to the All-Star team as well. None of their players ended up winning anything that year. I mean, hey, they had a season that was decent. I will give them that. That's about all I can say. They made the playoffs, and yeah. But then in 1985, the team signed another Heisman winner in quarterback Doug Flutie. So they literally just signed a MVP winning NFL quarterback and then are basically getting rid of him because they immediately traded him. But yeah, getting Doug Flutie was to give them even more credibility and the idea that they'd be better. But he suffered a broken collarbone in the 15th game, so he was out for the rest of the year. But overall, the team went 11-7. Herschel Walker broke the pro football record for rushing yards in a season. And yeah, I know it's 18 games, but the overall record is 2,400 yards he put up, which is insane. And they made the playoffs. But once again, they lost to the Stars in the first round, though this time was a much closer loss. The Stars put up 20, and the Generals were able to put up 17. So yeah, I mean, hey, it was a lot closer than it was, but I mean, that's an L, baby. In terms of what the players won, the players actually had a lot better guys. Kent Hull ended up being on both the All-League and All-Star team center. Herschel Walker once again was on both the All-League and All-Star team. James Lockett of the defensive end position was on the All-League team. Kerry Justin was on the All-League team. Jerry Holmes was on the All-Star team. And the Player of the Year and MVP winner would end up being Herschel Walker. Literally no surprise. They overall had a much better year that year, but at the end of the day, they just failed the same way they did before. And then for 1986 was when we talk about Trump Moore. He, despite being an owner who arguably was a great owner of his team, in terms of a league figure, he was pretty terrible. He was the guy that pushed him to move to fall, which, as we all know, completely backfired. And since they already were struggling, it's just like, it's pretty bad. I mean, overall, he convinced the owners to go to 84. He was going to try to rename the team and then play at a new stadium that he was going to make. And then the Generals acquired the assets of one of the teams displaced by the vote for the fall, which were the Houston Gamblers, which was supposed to be a merger. And because of that, they would get a bunch of other really high-quality players like Jim Kelly. And the run-and-shoot offense was supposed to be there. And then they were ready for the Kelly Walker Generals team, as that could probably be the only team that could beat the Stars, who, if you don't know at this point, were basically like the best team in the USFL. But they never played it down as the Kelly Walker because obviously the season got canceled after they won like $3 in the Sioux. And then a lot of their players, though, did go on to have productive NFL careers, as this team had a lot of guys who would be decent, not Hall of Famers, but just decent players. Overall, the team's attendance numbers were really solid. I didn't really mention it in the normal part because it's no point to just mentioning it now. They literally were third every single year. The first year they had 35,000. The second year they had 37,700. Then the last year they had 41,200. They got bested by the Bandits every season, and then the Gold the first year, and then in 84 and 85 they got bested by the Bulls as well in Jacksonville. I mean, they were third every year. Aside from the Bandits, they were the best team across all 3 years. So they deserve a lot of credit for being able to get fans at New Jersey, especially considering, they added fans every year, so they were definitely solid. The overall stat leaders of this franchise are pretty simple, honestly. The rushing yards, single-season leader, Herschel Walker, obviously for having the pro football record, 2,400 yards in 85. I mean, that's pretty good. Receiving yards, Sam Bowers had the single-season record for 700 yards, and of course he was also the career leader. He led the team in receiving twice, and the other year he was only down 100. But I mean, honestly, this team never passed the ball, which is pretty obvious when their all-time passing leader is Brian Sipe, who passed for 1 year in 1984 and only had 2,500 yards. I mean, the team literally just ran. But I mean, hey, whatever gets the job done, I guess. And then now it's time for the players. Just like last time, it's going to be me talking about guys who would just, either single season leaders, all time leaders, or just important figures. Then it's going to be the all league, all star teams, and then last is going to be the all time members. So the first player to talk about is Doug Flutie, the second Heisman Trophy winner to go to the New Jersey Generals. In his career, aside from the 1 year with the Generals, he would be a one-time Pro Bowler in the NFL, also a Comeback Player of the Year. But after the Generals, since that was his first team, in the CFL, he would actually become a legend. He's a CFL Hall of Famer, along with the College Football Hall of Fame, which is pretty solid. In the CFL, he was a 3-time Grey Cup winner, won the Grey Cup MVP 3 times, and won CFL Most Outstanding Player 6 times, which included winning 4 in a row. He was also a 6-time All-Star. I mean, he's a Heisman winner. He has CFL records for most touchdowns in a season and passing yards in a season. He's a legend in that place. I mean, that's a great career. The next guy is the all-time leader in receiving yards, Sam Bowers. He played just 1 year at the Bears after. I mean, he didn't do anything. He literally is basically just for the team. So yeah, I guess there's that, you know what I mean? Like, all-time receiving yards leader with 1,700 is pretty bad. Former MVP winner Brian Sipe, the man who was the big signing before they got rid of him for another big signing. He didn't do anything after the USFL with the Jacksonville Bulls last year. In the NFL beforehand, he was an MVP, an All-Pro first team and second team, a one-time Pro Bowler. I mean, he was solid, but overall, he's probably one of the most forgettable and arguably worst MVPs of all time. So yeah, I mean, there's that. Now it's time for the guys who were an All-Star, All-League member. James Lockett, who literally only played for the Generals his entire career. He ended up having 23.5 sacks during his time there. I mean, that's basically all it was. He was a member. I mean, he was solid, but he didn't do anything literally outside the NFL. I mean, not the greatest. Jim LeClaire, he is a college football Hall of Famer. That's basically all you can say about him. He played for the Bengals a few years before heading into the NFL and the USFL, and he was a Pro Bowler once. But that's pretty much it. I mean, hey, College Football Hall of Famer, that's pretty good. Jerry Holmes, we talked about him in the Pittsburgh Maulers video, and we're talking about him again now. He was the All-League member with them for the last year. He went on to play a few years in the NFL. He was decent, not great. He was a coach for a little bit. Yeah. And now the last guy that's just an all-league or all-team member is Kerry Justin. He played a few years for the Seahawks before going to the Generals, and then he would go on to play a couple more years for the Seahawks after the Generals. So, I mean, hey, that's pretty good, I guess. And now we get to the second team all-time. That man is center Kent Hull, the guy who would go on to become a truly great Buffalo Bill. As with the Bills, he was a 3-time Pro Bowler, a 2-time first-team All-Pro, and a 2-time second-team All-Pro. Started 169 games in his career. I mean, great guy. I mean, he helped block for Herschel Walker, and it's honestly surprising. He's the only offensive lineman from the New Jersey Generals to be on the all-time team. And now in terms of first team all-time, we have free safety Gary Barbaro. He played for the Generals for 1 year, but hey, he's all-time, so that's pretty good. He's a 3-time Pro Bowler, all USFL selection, obviously, but his 3 Pro Bowlers came before the Generals, as he was a 3-time Pro Bowler with the Chiefs. That was all he played. He started 101 games. He started every single game of his NFL career, which is pretty solid. So yeah, I mean, hey, that's pretty solid, I'll be honest with you. He's first team all-time, which is kind of weird, honestly, that he actually made it on there, but hey, he did. And then we get Herschel Walker. Herschel Walker, the legendary guy running for Senate right now, the legendary guy who's not in the Hall of Fame, the legendary guy who's in the most infamous trade in NFL history, the College Football Hall of Famer, and the guy who literally holds all the rushing records. Most rushing attempts, Herschel. Most rushing yards, Herschel. Most rushing yards in a season, Pro Football record, he has that. And most rushing yards in a career in the USFL, he has that too. In the NFL, though, however, he'd go on to play like 12 years. He was a 2-time second-team All-Pro, a 2-time Pro Bowler, a 2-time All-USFL selection in the USFL, as we mentioned, along with the USFL MVP, along with leading the league in rushing yards 2 times. He's a national championship winner in college, a Heisman Trophy winner, the first Heisman Trophy winner to go to the USFL. I mean, the man had 8K rushing yards in the NFL, and then if you add his USFL stats, he's got like over 12,000. I mean, he's great. He is the most famous New Jersey General player. He's one of the very few guys that quite arguably is more famous for the USFL than he is NFL. The only reason it's arguable is since he did play in, or was the factor in the legendary trade where Jimmy Johnson and, the Jerry Jones traded him for a ton of picks and players to the Vikings, and he ended up not being that great there. Yeah, that's all the players. Overall, for a team that was as high profile and had as many, notable guys as the Generals did, they didn't really do that much. They kind of underachieved a bit. I mean, they never won a title, they never even won a playoff game, but they did produce one of the arguable best players the USFL ever had, as Herschel Walker is very easily top 3 all time. I mean, yeah, he got fed a lot, but it takes a lot of running to get to 2,400 yards in a season, even if you did play 18 games. I mean, just truly a solid career for him. Kent Hull became a big name in the NFL. A lot of the other guys, though, would become just guys who were decent or guys who had played before, which is what makes this team weird, is that they didn't really have anyone aside from Flutie who did a lot afterward, but they had a decent amount of guys who did something before. But yeah, the Generals, I mean, they're a decent team. Comment down below if you want to see me do a specific team next. If you guys hit the subscribe button and hit the bell, you'll be notified as soon as I upload a new video. So, yeah, go for that, guys. Have a great night.